So within conventional theater and storytelling, there are two main categories stories tend to fall under. There are tragedies and there are comedies. Or at least that's how I framed it in my previous video, in which I declared that the game What Remains of Edith Finch is a tragedy. You might think you know where I'm going with this. If last time I talked about a tragedy, it would be reasonable to discuss its opposite counterpart next, a comedy. However, for me to label Hylics as a comedy, it would require me to 1. Play the game, and 2. Understand it. And while of course I did the former, my ass did not succeed in the latter, as I don't know what the hell is going on in Hylics half the time. While conventional stories can often fall into one of these two categories, I can't confidently classify Hylics under either of them because this has to be the most unconventional RPG I have ever played. Now I can absolutely tell you that Hylics is a surreal RPG Maker game made by Mason Linroth in 2015 and was successful enough to warrant a sequel 5 years later, but I cannot tell you much about the story, at least not in a way that would make sense. I mean, look at this. This game is so out there that there is no conceivable way you could talk much about it, right? This is an hour-long video breaking down Hylics. This one is twice that length, so obviously that mindset is very wrong. And rightfully so. I realize I might have approached this rather aggressively, so let me tone it back a little and clearly state that I do in fact enjoy this game. I am no stranger to otherworldly worlds like Hylics. The biggest comparison I can make is another surreal story I've experienced called Ina, which comes in the form of both a web series on YouTube and a game on Steam. This is also a psychedelic world that makes no human sense a majority of the time, yet I enjoy it just as much. It's not like me playing a game like Ina makes Hylics less confusing either, because it doesn't. But it's definitely accustomed me to be more comfortable with the strangeness of it all. In fact, to start, let me try and show you by explaining the basic premise of Hylics, as it's actually not the most confusing thing. In the first game, you play as this character with the face of a crescent moon named Wayne. With his friends, Dedosmoln, I cannot tell you what his face is shaped like, or even if I'm pronouncing these names right, Samsnosa, and Pangorma. You all seek out and fight the tyrannical Moon King named Gibby. Whilst on your adventure to defeat this tyrant, to grow stronger in preparation, you utilize these TVs that grant your party special abilities, you're granted help from these powerful entities known as sages, and also find these ancient artifacts, paper cups, which allows you to drink from water coolers and be imbued with the strength it gives. While visually abstract, on paper at least, it's simple enough to understand the story beats. But where the confusion sets in is that the dialogue and text within the game does not help you arrive at this understanding in any way. Let me just read you the very first excerpt of Hylics and what my introduction was. A text invisibly laments the beasts. The people exult far beyond a corrosion. It is a homunculus near a elusive hope. It is a kind of tyranny, of vent. Meanwhile, Gibby, king of the moon, forgets a concavity astride the truth furnace. Thus, your story begins. Now, if you were able to digest that in a natural way and actually understand it, no the frick you didn't. Other than standout names like Gibby or key phrases like tyranny and the only intelligible sentence, thus your story begins, there is no way you could gather much from that. Forgets a concavity astride the truth furnace? Just attempt to tell me what that combination of words could possibly mean. At first, I thought maybe my reading lexile had just tanked after high school, or that maybe I was just sleep deprived, but these incoherent expressions are in fact by design. Somehow through the RPG Maker engine, Mason Linroth created this system to pseudo-randomly generate words for each sentence. It's just random enough to be a silly mess, but keeps keywords to point you in the direction of where the story is going, and that the sentence follows basic syntax rules. So mainly the names of people and places stay relatively the same, but I say relatively because the names of the cities are randomized for that save file. So everyone will always play as the Crescent Moon character Wayne, but in my playthrough when I got to the first city, it was named Tyabor the Plastic City. Looking at a different playthrough, their city was called Vesulian the Little City. To make this nonsense make sense, it's shown that in the second game, the cause of this randomness does play into the main story as it is Gibby's doing. And it's why the group goes on this adventure to defeat him in the first game and prevent him from coming back in the second, as this oppressor tries to put down its subjects through this weird Mageddon magic and make a world where meaning has no meaning, or less meaning than there originally was. Not to imply that this game is meaningless, but especially from an outside perspective, with everything being already so abstract, it's hard to tell what is considered normal to begin with. For instance, when first playing, I didn't even realize that this world was being oppressed by a greater force and just thought this is how things were, as this environment and its systems are just generally so weird. Its combat, its culture, its currency, it's all such an alien concept with how it's presented. But on a surface level, it really just feels like here's a group of friends going on an adventure to defeat a bad guy. However, that's not remotely an issue. I don't think Hylics is focusing on telling a story that is new because it's very apparent that they've managed to show you something new that they want to show. Though I've constantly beaten the dead horse saying this game is far from normal, its world is handcrafted, literally in more ways than one, very representative of the avant-garde genre. The term avant-garde is basically used to describe an art form that pushes and breaks boundaries through experimentation of styles. The style of Hylics, because of this, isn't confined to one thing, as it is mixed media eye candy. There's stop motion, claymation, 3D modeling, pixel art, green screen magic. The fact that these characters and their sets are sculpted with so much love shows that it is far from meaningless. Although it is graphically stunning, and I could continue glazing it with how prevalent the visuals are, I'm not going to let it overshadow how musically stunning it is too. While Mason Linroth can be thanked for physically molding the world of Hylics for your eyes, Chuck Salamone is to thank for composing the psychedelic rock soundtrack that blesses your ears. Other than perfectly matching the bizarre atmosphere and making you groove uncontrollably, it does end up playing a pretty big role in the narrative as well. Following the events of Hylics 2, the epilogue and bridge between Hylics 3, whenever that comes out, is even told through a banger rock opera called Absent Moon. Also, I know I mentioned Hylics has a simple story in spite of its complex visuals, and then I proceed to contradict myself by mentioning that the lore runs so deep it needed an entire musical number to contain it. But I think that's more a product of the world itself rather than the story. As is natural with how Hylics is presented, there are a lot of questions that inevitably get answered and expand this world. Even if that expansion is out there, it is in fact so out there that it wraps back around to being good creative fun more than anything. Like, I can honestly say, I don't think Mason Linroth fully understands what he's making a lot of the time anyway.
This creature aspect to Wayne, there's like old Wayne is like this weird, creature, and then these like pods and eggs hatching more Waynes, and they're crawling out of the afterlife. So I was trying to get some of that like weird, inhuman, experience in there with the
But that doesn't matter because they seem to really love making this game, and I, along with many others, love to consume it. And many of those others are people far more artistically talented than I, because holy crap. For what little content of this game exists, or I guess more specifically coherent content, people have just taken what they're given and ran with it. There is so much fan content I've stumbled upon for this series that is supposed to be confusing, that looks confusing, but it finds a way to resonate with the cult following it has and reach people outside of that following like me. Because this game has so many questions, it allows others the ability to project themselves onto the characters and this world, giving it the meaning they so desire. I mean, even Chuck Salamone, who works closely with Mason Linroth himself, seems to write music interpretively at times, as there is so much meaning that can be pulled from things. However, what makes me admire how Hylics does it is that it doesn't feel like you have to add this meaning. You can absolutely search for meaning within everything, or you could just chill and absorb this surreal world without fear that you're misunderstanding something. Because it's very likely you won't understand a lot of things, and a lot of things don't have to be understood. I don't doubt Hylics has bigger messages, and there are definitely cyclical themes revolving around the main character Wayne, and that maybe within Linroth's head is the answer to everything. But I am content with living in the moment and being able to experience Hylics for the beautiful display of artistry it is, and honestly just vibing with what's on display. I know I'm probably not explaining my love of this and the admiration I have for it very well on a logical level. That's just not something I can do when it is such a unique game that refuses to follow the rules and instead lets itself be what it is. This recreational program might be unconventional, but I love it just for that.